Hey everyone, it's me, John Lorden, and I'm back with another edition of BrainScratch. And yes, we are heading back to the Elisa Lam case. Basically, I've got a bunch of great information from a YouTube user called BweD. I've come to know him as Chris, but you might see he's been leaving some comments on a couple of the videos, and he sent me a wealth of information about some of the real estate issues that have been going on around the Cecil, and asking questions about could these possibly be related to what happened to Elisa in some way. So I just wanted to review basically all of these legal issues with you and touch a little bit on where her family has basically filed a wrongful death suit, and ask for your help near the end. But before I get started, just a big thank you to my new friend Chris, or as you might see him on YouTube, BweD. And as a matter of fact, at the end of the video, I'm also going to do a shout out segment to a bunch of great commenters. The support around this show has been amazing, and this is kind of kicking into a new gear now where people are really bringing me a bunch of very good information and essentially helping the show thrive even more. So thank you. We're going to start this episode with a little bit of a story. And this was posted on a Tumblr called Lost Angels, California. And I believe it's a repost of an article that is basically giving you a little taste of what the Cecil Hotel was like back in 2008. And if you remember, 2008 is when we had our big kind of financial crisis that was heavily centered around the banks, but there was a lot of kind of wacky real estate transactions that fed into that bust, and this story might touch upon that a little bit too. So let's start with the story. Check-in at the Cecil Hotel had to wait a few minutes because Carrie Torrance, the clerk working the graveyard shift one night in November, had to deal with a heist. A man staying on the 10th floor had called down to report that a woman had grabbed his money and bolted. After the woman dashed through the lobby and burst out the front doors onto Main Street, Torrance called police while a handful of guests waited. "She's right out there, you'll see." "Well, he said they were doing drugs, cocaine or something," Torrance told police officers. Then she cupped the receiver and mouthed, "I'm sorry, just a minute." This was not the type of greeting the new owners of the Cecil desire as they tried to rebrand the 80-year-old hotel between 6th and 7th Streets. "We are not a missionary. We're not a halfway house. We are a tourist's hotel," Torrance explained. In its early years, the Cecil and hotels such as the $1 Million, the Alexandria, and the Rosslyn catered to the city's elite out-of-town visitors, and lavish parties were held in their grand ballrooms. When the wealthy abandoned downtown during the Depression, the Cecil and others like it became residential hotels that for generations housed those who were one step above homelessness. But downtown is becoming a hip destination again, and these hotels are sought by developers who say they can turn a profit by luring university students, working professionals, and tourists. Definitely not the type of hotel check-in process that I want to be watching as I'm trying to get up to my room, and really worth noting to me is by luring university students. As in marketing terms, they are targeting this group and trying to bring them to the property. Now, just a little more backstory about Los Angeles in this period of time. Basically, there had been a bunch of real estate developers that all started working on downtown LA very hard. And what they were trying to do was create kind of a new hip, I've seen it referred to as a hip yuppie destination, and that's essentially what it is. There are so many big businesses that work in downtown that are huge money businesses that they wanted a way for people to live there also. So there were a lot of buildings that were renovated, and the upper floors were turned into living spaces, basic residential quarters. And they go for premium amounts of money because essentially If you were someone that worked at, you know, one of the financial areas of downtown LA, you could have this rad condo and be within walking distance of work, which, if you've lived in the LA area at all, people that don't have to commute, that's a luxury within itself. So there was a lot of money being pumped into downtown LA at that point, and this is right before actually the bubble burst on some of that. And the Cecil it's close enough to the downtown LA area. It's just right on the fringe. It's strange because downtown looks really nice in some parts now, and then you can just hit this one street where you really see the history of what that city's been through. But also worth noting, and I'm not sure how they effectively did this, but it used to be that when you would go to downtown LA, you would see homeless people everywhere. Basically every door stoop, every set of steps somewhere was their home or where they were camping out for that period of time. And as this money kind of influxed into downtown LA and tried to turn it into this new yuppie destination, the homeless people disappeared. And I think Skid Row probably went through a growth period during that, because homeless people don't just disappear, they get displaced. My assumption, and I don't know this for fact, is that law enforcement may have helped move the homeless out of the kind of higher priced areas of downtown LA, and essentially I believe Skid Row probably went through an expansion at that point. So here's a little story about a man named Fred Cordova, who is one of these real estate guys that has a lot of money, works with other firms in trying to find good deals for real estate and develop them into even better deals. And here is how he came into the story of the Cecil. Built in 1927, the Cecil Hotel stands on Main between 6th and 7th Streets, visibly planted between past and future. Like other aging area hotels, including the Alexandria, the King Edward, and the Frontier, the Cecil has in recent years been a site of high crime and a home for low-income people and those with addiction and mental problems. In 2003, then-owners John DeLuca and Dale Laurer spent millions to restore the Cecil's lobby and renovate its common areas and some of its rooms. Now, while the air-conditioned entrance hall boasts stained glass skylights, blooming potted plants and marble floors, most of the 15-story hotel's 600 rooms are bare bones. There are dingy walls, spare furnishings, and shared industrial toilets and closet-sized showers on each floor. That is about to change. From broker to buyer. Originally hired by DeLuca and Laurer to broker the Cecil sale, Cordova, who is Senior Vice President of Colliers International Investment Services Group, was offered the hotel at an undisclosed discount when the owners could not find a buyer willing to pay the $35 million asking price. It goes on to talk about his history here, that he's worked in the downtown area for a bit, developing properties. And if you look into his background, you will see that he has a lot of experience being a part of those types of projects. Though being the primary or principal person, he lists the Cecil and the stay on Main, which was, I think, kind of his clever way of trying to get around some of the resistance from the city council he was facing. Those are two of his top projects, and I think he only has two other ones where he is listed as the principal developer. So basically, he came in as broker trying to help them sell it. They couldn't sell it, and they negotiated a price with him directly. Now this is a letter that was written on April 18th, 2008 to the office of the city clerk from the Cecil Hotel. This is directly from Fred Cordova. And what's interesting about this, in the first section, he actually calls out that he went to this city council meeting, put his card in the deck of people that are supposed to be able to come up and talk about their issues, and essentially was never called to speak. Was that intentional? Did the card get lost? I have no idea. Did the city council not want to hear anything about the Cecil? I'm really not sure. But what's curious about this document is it does speak pretty directly about some of the Cecil's former issues. We want to be part of the solution in making downtown a better place for everyone. When we took over the Cecil, it was in crisis. The previous operators turned a blind eye to what was going on inside with their guests. Drug dealers would check in and set up shop, and customers would come in, rent a room, and spend the next several days getting high. Police reports reflected an average of more than a death a month, and in some months, as many as 6, from overdoses and drug-related matters. Since we, quote, cleaned up the hotel, incidents of such have practically disappeared. Many lives have been saved. This guy likes giving himself some credit. The Cecil is no longer a safe haven for criminals to prey on the less fortunate in our society. The Cecil is the only commercial hotel in downtown that provides visitors to Los Angeles with a quality, affordable place to stay. We are not converting any rooms to market rate housing. We are not kicking anyone out. This is basically him refuting some claims that the long-term residents who are protected by laws to live there at special reduced rates were being harassed in some way to try to get them to move out. And I've seen interviews with some of these guys where they say that they were literally, called to move from room to room to room, not given any excuse why, which is kind of a form of harassment. You try to make people uncomfortable until they leave. And also worth noting, as these articles go on, the number of residents that they've had stay at the Cecil under these types of conditions seems to be dwindling sharply pretty quickly. In the earlier articles around this time, they mentioned that it's upwards around 130 people, and within a couple years that drops to 100. Literally today I received a report from someone that says that there's only 19 people still living there. So very, very interesting. Another strange twist that I didn't bump into before is in May of 2010, a Los Angeles Fire Department paramedic was stabbed in the property after reportedly responding to a request for help. However, there were inconsistencies in the paramedic's story, and the account was later called into question. The assailant was never found. Just kind of strange to me that a paramedic would be stabbed and then all of a sudden his opinion of what happened is called into question. There seems to be a pattern of this happening around this property where something bad happens to someone and then people kind of doubt the conditions around that bad thing happening, even though they have a stated history of having these types of problems go on here. So if we were wondering about Fred Cordova and what kind of deal he got, if you remember they were trying to sell the Cecil for $35, according to this article, and it's weird because I've seen two different figures, but according to this one, he was part of a group of buyers who purchased it for $28.5 million, and then he was planning on sinking $7 million more into renovations for it. However, that was for him to convert it to a proper hotel. He was still going to have enough rooms to try to take care of the people that were living there, but all the other rooms he wanted to flip into a hotel, and he basically got a lot of pushback around that. There was a few lawsuits that were kicked off around this. There is a group called LACAN. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it's like a something action network, but basically it was a group that was helping to represent the people that have been living there, the next to homeless people that are using the Cecil as their primary residence. And they filed a lawsuit because of Fred's plans to change this to a hotel. He thought that that would, in essence, raise the rent of the people that had been living there and essentially force them out in some way. Also, Fred's own partners sued him, basically citing that they were led into this deal under false pretenses. So a lot of pressure is all of a sudden on this Fred guy, especially if he can't make the Cecil a proper hotel. So what does he do? He essentially starts another business called The Stay and gives it its own entry point from the street, which I believe is just a legality needed for it to be a separate business. It has a separate entrance from the entrance to the Cecil Hotel. And then in terms of how that business operates, you basically make it look like this is a separate business. They're renting rooms from the Cecil as needed for their hotel needs. It's kind of a loophole, kind of a backdoor way that you can essentially get your hotel functioning, even if the city is still trying to maintain this as residential rate housing for specific people. At the end of all this, basically, Fred had to make a settlement, and he released his rights to the building, letting it fall back to the lender, which forestalled a foreclosure that was happening. I don't know if he decided he was going to stop paying his mortgage on it or what. The owners will agree to residential hotel status and to having an agreed upon number of residential units. And they say that one person familiar with it says that that was about 300 units. There's another article which says, I believe, that there was 301 units that were residential and 299 that were able to be used as hotel units. So basically there's a little gap in the history here, so I can't tell if the lender decided to hold on to it and then hire a management team, or if the lender actually sold it to another group of investors. But the articles now start mentioning a fellow named Herb Chase as being the primary caretaker or manager of the Cecil Hotel, and he starts trying to develop different plans for it. A lawsuit between the hotel owners was settled in January when an agreement was reached that maintains the Cecil as a residential hotel. The building was allowed to have 301 residential units and 299 hotel rooms. The settlement included a counterclaim filed by former residents and an advocacy group, the Los Angeles Community Action Network, that's the LCAN that I couldn't remember before, charging rent control violations and other transgressions. The suit was settled for $90,000. The settlement generally established the hotel as a residential hotel, as well as established damage for some long-term tenants who had been illegally moved and attempted to be relocated. Another lawsuit filed between the hotel owners was settled this year and prompted the ownership change. Chase, that's our new pal, said the downtown-based Cecil's Main Street LLC group now owns the hotel, although he would not identify its members. Cordova is no longer involved with the property and did not return any calls for comment. Chase said all upgrades to the hotel are on hold due to the economy. Currently, the 299 hotel rooms are available for guests. So now we're starting to get a little sense of their conversion is starting to work to make this a full and proper hotel, but they basically got flagged with a bunch of code violations for the rooms not having sufficient heating was one of the things cited and on the residential side. And now Herb Chase is saying, hey, we just don't even have the money to do the upgrades that are needed to the hotel right now. And this is taking place on April 10th of 2012. So now we're starting to get very close to Elisa's timeline of showing up, and we have basically heard the story of a hotel / low-income residence that is, it's really, if you think about it, it's mixing two very different types of people into one location, and some of these people have pretty substantial problems that have been noted for years and years and years in the history of this hotel. And I'm not even talking as deep as the Richard Ramirez story, the Black Dahlia story, those kind of high-profile stories. I'm talking average, normal crimes and almost a death happening there per month for its period, at least before Fred bought it. Now, what I'm curious about is the perception of these crimes. Fred Cordova made it pretty clear that he was doing this great thing and having an impact on the hotel. Well, what if all of a sudden there was some things that were starting to poke through to show that that wasn't the case? Would the hotel have a vested interest in trying to steer public perception to make people think that maybe the things that are happening there aren't as bad as they seem? And of course, personally, for me, that ties directly to what happened to Elisa and the question of, was it a murder or was it truly this accidental death? Would someone have a vested interest to steer that perception that worked at the hotel? At least for the period that Fred was there, I think that's pretty clear. The period that is now Herb Chase managing the hotel, it's a bit fuzzier because Herb Chase went on to actually try to convert the hotel, let's see here, yeah, into a full homeless housing facility. Essentially, they drew up a plan to say, okay, well, we'll just make all the rooms for homeless housing. They would basically get some kind of kickbacks and subsidies from the city for doing this. They were going to include services to help the homeless. You could have on-site counselors, and essentially that would help try to pull some of the homeless people off the street and at least give them a roof over their head. Well, apparently the city council wasn't happy with that either, so that whole plan that was drafted up and created was pulled. And I can't remember if it was Fred or Herb, but one of them did some analysis on it and figured that they could make a bunch of money pushing the building in that direction too, because of all the kickbacks that they might get for doing that. So what you wind up with here is this building that is literally having an identity crisis and fighting for its own viability in one of two directions and being pushed back in both ways. It's almost like Fred had the right idea at the wrong time. I mean, he literally bought it right before the financial crash. I think that gave a lot of people cold feet all of a sudden to this kind of flip it mentality that was happening for real estate back then. I mean, how many shows did you see about people flipping houses and making tons of money, and people that were carrying 3 mortgages, making tons of money renting out places and all that? All of that wacky real estate industry really went pop around the time that Fred got this. The funny thing is, now that the yuppie downtown area is kind of growing, that is the same mechanism that is now stopping people that are trying to turn it into homeless housing. So it's just, this building is caught, it's like it's literally caught between two ideas of what it could be, and everyone around it is saying, no, just stay the way you are. But if we look at the history of it, it hasn't been a great history for downtown LA, for the people that stay there, and even for the homeless people that have been living there for years and years, relying on that place to give them some roof over their head. So, outside of all this, this is new news, literally just from this week, June 13th, 2015. Death outside Skid Row Hotel is under investigation as a possible suicide. It seems like someone has jumped from the building. And the initial report on it here is that they don't believe this was someone that was staying there. They believe that this was what they call an intruder to the building, which is very strange because I've read a lot about this building now and know that it has security. Its security used to be infamous for being kind of thugs, guys that were armed with mace and nightsticks and were very unfriendly. When Fred bought it, he kind of brought in a new security detail. They removed the weaponry from these guys, essentially dressed them up in nice blazers and gave them a walkie-talkie, and that's about it. And supposedly that worked pretty well and helped kind of reshape the image there. But to think that someone entered the building, got to a spot that they could jump from and kill themselves, once again makes me really question the management of this building and the safety around it. There should be some precautions to stop people from hurting themselves. I mean, this appears at this point, for where this story is, this isn't even a guest. This is someone that could have possibly just been depressed, saw a tall building, walked in it, took the elevator up to the top floor, picked a window, and jumped. Now, that's a lot of conjecture and assumption on my part, but honestly, this article doesn't give us a whole lot. As we find in Elisa's case, the facts are kind of hard to come by in this. So, where does that lead us? Well, that leads us to Elisa's parents, and essentially in, I believe it was in September of 2013, they filed a wrongful death lawsuit. And once again, I just got to give a shout out to my new friend Chris, who obtained some of the paperwork around this lawsuit and was able to share it with me. He's not sure about making it public. It is public information, so if you want to request it, you just need to go to the Superior Court, find a way to request it. You'll pay some fee to get a copy of the paperwork, and you'll be able to look at it yourself. But I haven't been able to find it posted publicly anywhere. However, I can tell you I have reviewed it personally, and it's legit by all accounts from what I can see. They are essentially charging the hotel with not being a safe environment, and the hotel, I also saw their counter response that talks about a few of their defenses. They believe that Elisa might have done something of her own accord that caused her to die, which of course is the official story. They also, in one section, pretty much accuse her parents of being negligent, and I think what they're trying to allude to is letting her even take this trip alone to begin with. But there is a curious section in the middle of both of those where the hotel owners are saying that they have some knowledge and also allege that another party might have been responsible for what happened to her. When I first read that, I was like, whoa, they're basically saying that they have knowledge and are alleging that someone else is involved here, but it's not them. But I do believe that that's probably to steer the parents towards possibly suing the pharmacy. I thought when I had done my research on Elisa a while ago that I bumped into a piece of information that this suit was settled already. I tried to search for that again, and I couldn't find it. So as of right now, I'm not positive if that suit is still active or not. That's also part of the reason why I'm not big on sharing the documentation. We don't want to do anything that could potentially jeopardize that lawsuit. However, this is where I'm going to ask all you brain scratchers for some help. If you could please dig around and find out the status of that case, that might be helpful. In particular, if you can find a link about there being any potential settlement, because that's kind of what I recall happening, but to be honest, I've reviewed so many different things that I'm not quite sure now. Also, kind of a neat side effect to all the research that I did for today, I also bumped into another piece of social media that belonged to Elisa. This is her Listography account, which is a place where you can talk about your favorite authors and favorite books. And it seems like she really liked to read. There was also some conversations that go on below it with her speaking to other people. Nothing that is very pertinent to the case, but once again, you can get a clear sense of her voice. And in particular, these posts are from around August 2012. This seems like someone that really loved literature and didn't seem to be all that depressive at this point in time, or at least writing about this particular topic. So it might just give you another view into who she was as a person, which I think all of us could use, especially people that are just looking at that elevator tape and trying to conclude who she was based on that 4 minutes, which I really think is a shame and not the best way to view her. So that's it, brain scratchers. Like I said, do me a favor, see if you can let me know what happens with that case. I also wanted to take a minute and thank some top commenters here. Shroom Factory, Chester Gibson, Michael at KY, Tyler Terry, always love seeing your comments. Wilhelm Werner Winter, Solid Snake 2948, Mickey's MDN, my good friend Colin McGuire, how you doing, Colin? And Mary Flavin, also becoming a good friend very quickly. Fix01 and Donnie Don't. Also, quick shout out to Emre Emirli, hope I'm saying that right. I've only been reading it, I haven't heard it in person, but he's given me a bunch of great new research for a whole new topic on BrainScratch that will be likely coming up soon. Flying Spaghetti Monster, always good to hear from you. Fuyara, who thinks he's a troll, but he's really not a troll. He's a great supporter of the show. He always shares the new episodes with other people, and he leaves some damn funny comments. He thinks I should do a show called Crotch Scratch, but I don't think I could get that posted on YouTube. And finally, to YouTuber Shanna Sorensen, who reached out and gave me some very good advice about the YouTube business in general, and has offered to be a friend of mine in case I need to ask any future things. Thank you so much, Shanna. Also, just a reminder to everyone, I have my second radio interview on the Elisa Lam case. We're going to be recording it this weekend. I'm not sure when it's going to air exactly, but stay tuned to the Geek and Dorks channel, and I'll be sure to post a vlog, give you a link so that you can check that out, and maybe we'll make some new discoveries in this case together. I hope you're all having an amazing week. Thank you once again so much from the bottom of my heart for supporting this show. One of the Elisa videos is over 80,000 views now. I can't believe the amount of support, and it's due to all of you out there who are watching, sharing, commenting, and most importantly, scratching that brain and thinking. Thank you guys so much. Catch you next time on BrainScratch.